Hey, everybody. I just wanted to, I've been thinking so much about the quest and what drew me to this work. And sometimes I feel like, oh, everybody knows my story. But then I realize, no, sometimes you haven't met me much before, you haven't done much work with me, and you don't really know my story. So I wanted to share a little bit more about my journey and how Mythos Journey Work and QuestPath actually saved me, and what it happened to me and how it became something that I offered to others. So once upon a time, many years ago, I found myself lost and in a place of pretty desperate confusion. I was unwinding from raising kids. I had had a pretty serious back injury, and I was embarking on a separation. So all of these probably years of just giving myself away, giving too much of myself away, not having the time or the space to be clear about who I was or what I wanted, had eroded my sense of self. And I embarked on journey work in a very organic way. I got pretty quiet. I called it my silent year. I started connecting with earth-based energies. I started talking to the moon. I started thinking about the inner landscape or the inside of my life in a way that I just had never done. And I think it was that I was in survival mode. I was falling apart. I was having to take the time to sort of lose myself and find myself again. And all of us have stories or periods of time in our life when we feel bereft, when we are grieving, when we've experienced loss, when we're in the, that state of confusion, where we've lost our bearing, where we've lost our sense of identity. And it seems to happen for many of us women in the middle of our life. I work with women in the Quest. Quest sisters have been in their 20s and their 80s, and it really is multi-generational because we're working with women's lives, and we all are a reflection of one another. In fact, when we start to dive deep into working with parts of self or ages and stages, we realize any one of us could be traveling with many parts of self that are 5 or 12 or 30 or 50 or 90. And that chronological age has nothing to do with who we have been, who we are, and who we are becoming. So back to my story. The broken self, the self that felt like all the windows had been blocked by a layer of gray dust or detritus. The part of me that just felt like I was sort of walking under a cloud and barely surviving. And it was a deep emotional state of grieving, of confusion, of loss. And I had to be present to it. And I am a big avoider of strong emotions, and I was really avoidant of strong emotions back then. But I had to be present to myself in a way that I could start to listen. So I was practicing sacred listening, first with nature, then with creative process, as I started to use shamanic dreaming techniques, guided process, drumming, and connections with some powerful artists who also walked in this way that allowed me to start to feel my way onto a new path. That new path was actually helped along by my mentor, Debbie Ford. I did a coaching program with her when I was several years into this process and started to really dive deep into shadow work and realize that a lot of the stories that I was carrying were stories that were going to be never ending if I didn't start to cultivate a way to shift my relationship with my own stories. And so that was the birthplace of restorative healing in my work and restoring our stories through the creative process, not the way Debbie did it in just straight talk coaching or workshops, but the way that I brought that work to meet my own work as a transformative artist and as a guidess, working, guiding women's lives, guiding women to restoring and the restorative healing that was necessary to transform a life. When we feel that we're surviving, we go into fight or flight or freeze, don't we? And that's just the natural way. We also tend to travel back into vulnerable moments and almost have a trauma reaction. Now, any of you who've gone through trauma, you know how extreme that is. You know that that sensation is so overwhelming. So I'm not suggesting that any of us would know your own feelings, but I am suggesting that women with all kinds of histories and circumstances and approaches to life and feeling states and emotional states and desire to create change in their own life, bring their stories and bring their energy to the quest. Questing is my version of going on that long personal journey using influences and energies that are being offered in the collective through stories and myth and resonance and sacred place, images and symbols and metaphors and memories and moments, mythic moments, to actually feed that all into a process that is also never ending. Not stuck like some of the old stories that will travel through our lives and trip us up, but restoring the story and actually developing a way to be in life through the creative process. And so Mythos Journey work was the way that I moved myself out of a stuck place and into an abundant, open, generative space of discovery. And that discovery has led me to building on this work. And now it's, 12 years later that I've been offering journey work in this way, Mythos Journey work at QuestPath. And it's just grown and delivered so much more than I thought it could. It's also a space where we get to see ourselves through the lens of other. It's a really sacred witnessing place. There is not any kind of interference. We bring our own personal stories, our own sense of what it is to be in the journey to the collective, to our sacred circle, making a whole new field of experience. And we witness one another, we listen. It's not a space where we're being interrupted by a lot of noise from outside. There are some nice ground rules that keep it super safe. We're working with our own personal stories and our own feelings and our own sense of what it is to be traveling within this skin in real time, but also in the imaginal, in the dream world, and in the archetypal plane, where we can start to expand our experiences and shapeshift and become more than we've known in the past. So we start to slip into the skin of what it is that we can sense we carry in our in the journey of a lifetime. What we want to experience, we start to experience in the creative process. So my story of where I was back at the beginning in the early 2000s, where I started to listen for clues and recognize that messages were being offered, that allowed me to start to clear the gray off the windows and crack them open and feel my heart expanding and connect the dots in ways that gave me permission. I gave myself permission to be more than I felt I was in that time. And regardless of whether things are hard and challenging, for many of us, we feel like this has been a really challenging couple of years. We bring ourselves to the journey. We bring ourselves to the quest. And we express and expand and start to feel into new options. There's this beautiful translation space of where we're working with art in the imaginal, and then we start to see how we're activating something and it ripples out into our everyday life. We can start to feel our way into that space of transformation, real change. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's overt, and there's a beautiful way that each of us is then sharing that part of ourselves. The way we work with the sacred wheel and our inner seasons and our outer seasons works both in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, where we're working on opposite schedules, but something about, these seasonal energies kind of flow in and out of our awareness of who we are. Think of our phases of life as seasonal energies, or the arc of a journey through a day as many seasons. So we work with seasons, we work with mythic references, we work with journey work in a pure sense as guided journeys that are developed along thematic lines and will come week after week if certain phase of the journey. And then we're working with certain themes altogether, but our individual stories are all different. You can see the kind of art that can be generated right behind me. Where we create landscapes and maps and start to enter into relationship with ourself, reflected back through image or through color or through line or form. And creative process can be so divergent. This is just a space of starting to shift our stories more consciously. I think we all think, well, stories are stories. To me, stories are experiences, and we know some of them and we don't know others. We have all kinds of experiences and ways we feel and know and see and be, ways that we be. But it's true, that state of being, we're only as aware as we are aware. And if I use myself as an example, I can be very unaware. I can really step over myself. I can just step past something that I don't want to deal with in the moment. So we bring our humanness to the journey space, to the quest. But surviving the hardest parts of my life, this year has been one of the hardest years ever for me. I lost my ex-husband to suicide. I lost two close friends of my teen years. All three were 56 or 57, died of disease or illness in the last year. And it's been a tremendous year of change. And I've done my work as I always do. I've taken my grief and my loss and my sense of how to survive what feels so insane, both inside my life and also externally. I bring that connection into conversation through creative process. And it serves me. It gives me a space to be true to myself, to tell the truth, and to also see myself and be present to what I'm feeling and what I'm doing and what I'm sensing and what I'm expressing that sometimes I can't take anywhere else. And I've done this for long enough that I know to bring it to the circle. And I know to tell the truth to others who are like-minded women. And I trust that it's safe to do that because I've tested it. And I've learned to trust. Trust was one of my big issues all my life, not trusting. And so when I have a year like this year, I have to lean back into trust. I have to make space to be held. I need to create for myself a place to be safe in my grief, but also to be safe in myself and to be true to myself and to be clear about my intentions. I don't want to lose my way, even if I'm lost in grief. And so those are choices. Those are conscious ways that I meet myself. And questing and journey work has allowed me to do that. And so, of course, I'm excited about inviting everybody in, and I want everybody to do this work. I give you all a taste of it on occasion with like a free Ignite Your Life or do a solstice journey with me. But the depth and the way in which this small group travels together for a year, the way that you start to see your own story as you're moving in and out of seasons and from theme to theme, there's just nothing more profound than this kind of space. In fact, I changed the way that I offer Quest a number of years ago because I had all kinds of individual journey classes happening through the year, like 5, 6, 7 journey classes, every 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, there was something new, depending, some were short, some were long. So I fit a lot in a year. But a lot of women were traveling in and out of class to class to class. And what the year-long circle has done is it's allowed me to create a space for us to be together in and out, following our own rhythms, really pacing our own journey work according to us, but having access to everything through the year and being able to bundle it together and create a much more cohesive journey experience. And that has really changed a lot, changed us, those of us who travel year after year after year. And I love that, that women love this work so much that they travel again and again. That creates such a profound place of connecting to ourselves, connecting to one another. When we have so much noise in the outer world, so much disruption, so much anxiety, where can we come to do this kind of work and start to recognize that we're speaking the same language, that we're interested in archetypes and esoteric approaches to our lives, that we want to be able to work with parts of self and be well understood, that we love creating despite having been an art school dropout. That was me. That we love creating. So art as process allows us the freedom to be self-expressed without worrying about perfection or technique or doing it wrong, because there's no way to do it wrong. But we have to sometimes journey for a long time to realize the story of doing it right is a birthright. That story of doing it right, it's heart sore when we feel that our worth is tied up in doing it a certain way or how somebody else sees us. But those are stories that we travel with, and we have to unravel back to the source and grow into something new. So I just get really excited this time of year, and we're rolling into Samhain. We're rolling into that time of November 1st. It's a very potent time of death and rebirth, where, all the leaves are falling back to earth, where we get to fall into ourselves and begin again. It's the Celtic New Year, in fact. And we work with wheels of the year that are actually based on cross cultures. We have the Aboriginal wheel, we have the Celtic wheel of the year, we have the nature wheel, we have the medicine wheel. So we're working with all kinds of mythic ancestral references when we're working with different, themes or ways that we might see ourselves or things that we might get excited about in the creative process that inform each of us, because that's really what it's all about. So, my journey has taken me from there to here. It's taken me through years, 20 plus years of leaving my art making, my pure art making, my creativity behind, because I just felt that I didn't measure up to what I wanted to be, the kind of art I wanted to make. I had no exposure to art as process, no exposure to expressive arts and techniques that just allowed me to be immersed in my creative process. That immersion, that ability to, inform my life through my art making, to see myself reflected back to me, it was something that I had just never known until I stumbled back into relationship with myself at a really hard time. And I started to build on certain tools that I gathered and had certain mentors that brought me along, that helped me to learn about things that I've now woven into the journey, like dream techniques and sand play and expressive arts and journey work in the indigenous ways. In fact, a lot of indigenous ways of knowing and intuitive creativity with intentional application are woven in and out of the journey. So I invite you to join and see what this journey might bring you, understanding that if you know that you're being called, don't pass it up. I've given a really great early bird discount, and I invite you to take advantage of any extra savings here or there. And I will be recording a masterclass next week. You can be there live or you can listen later, and that masterclass is going to give a lot of juicy information. So sending love on this beautiful weekend. Hope all is settling into your system so that you can choose what is best for you.